Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to COVID and the Law. I'm Samson Ladi Anyenini. And this afternoon, a very important, disturbing issue. Where is the justice for women who get defiled or raped, or in cases of domestic abuse? When the law says, we are told, they ought to be examined medically, which is very important part of the process for justice for them in the prosecution process. And they ought to be treated free of charge. And yet, they are asked to pay so much, between 800 and 2,000 Ghana cedis. Sometimes they simply can't afford it. So they walk away, and there is no justice. The perpetrators still lurking around, looking for their next victim to rape or defile. How do we get the best of care and treatment for rape and defilement victims and get justice for the perpetrator, for them, as the perpetrators are punished? Join us here. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is COVID and the Law. And as indicated to you already, we are dealing with the question of why victims of domestic violence, sexual abuse more particularly, rape and defilement, are asked to pay fees for medical examination and for treatment when, as we understand, the law says otherwise. So we are very, very privileged to be joined here this morning for this discussion by Chief Superintendent Owusuwa Treme, and she is the Director of the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit. That's DOVSU. Thank you for making time to join us. You're most welcome. Great. And also, just by her, is Cynthia Nimo Ampredu, who is a lawyer and former Executive Director of the Human Rights Advocacy Center. Cynthia, thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
Right. Joining us via Zoom are Dr. Ako Akoto Ampao. He is the Medical Director, Eastern Regional Hospital, Koforidua, and also actor and TV presenter, Ama K. Abebrese. Thank you all so very much for making the time to join us to look at this subject. Do I have Dr. Ako on the line? Hello, Doc. Dr. Ampa, if you can unmute yourself so we can hear you. I'm saying hi to you before we start. Okay, so let's, great to have you. Good afternoon. Okay, right. And Amake Abebrese also joins us in a minute so that we begin to look at this subject matter in detail. So first, let's start with DOVSU, the entity set up by the state under the police service to provide the needed support for victims or survivors of domestic violence. So how bad is the situation of this sexual abuse targeted at women? How bad is it?
Thank you very much, Samson, for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers. For me, I always say that even if it is one woman who is being sexually assaulted, it is an issue.
Okay.
Because for somebody to be sexually abused, it's like you've lost control. Because when it comes to your person, at least you should be able to have some protection, some form of control over your body.
Right.
So for your body to be invaded the way some women's bodies have been invaded, then it's like you've lost control. There is no hope for you to live in the mind of the survivor. So one person is too much for me.
That's right.
And currently, if you look at our statistics over the years, you have instances where on a yearly basis, you can have about 300 plus women being sexually abused. That's for rape victims.
Okay.
And then for defilements, it's normally over 1,000 sometimes. I'll just give you a few statistics. So I'll give up to from 2017 to 2019.
Okay.
So for 2017, we had 307 women being raped, and then we have 790 girls and boys, it depends, defilement for defilement. Now, so the difference between rape, maybe before I go further, is to say that a person under the law is said to be raped if somebody, a man, there's a female, a man has sex with a female without the female's consent, and the female must be 16 years and above. So if any person, any man decides to have sex with 16-year-old girl, and it's female, under the laws of Ghana, it's only a female who can be raped. So when you have a sex with a female 16 years and above, it is rape. But for defilement, it is a child below the age of 16 years. That's amount to defilement.
Right. And for the defilement, it doesn't matter that there is consent.
Yes,
Okay.
It just doesn't matter. Whether it's the small girl who came and said, you know, I want to have sex, so have sex with me, and then you go ahead and have sex. It doesn't matter.
So you were sharing the statistics where you find that the defilement numbers are more than even the rape numbers.
Yes, yes. So for defilement in 2017, it was 790, and in 2018, rape was 211, and defilement was 634. And in 2019, rape was 369, and defilement was 1,270. So it means that for the year 2019, the issue of defilement just kind of almost doubled. It went very high.
And as you went through the statistics, it's very obvious that each time or each year, it is the defilement cases that are more.
Yes.
Is there some explanation to that? These are girls. Is there explanation why the rape cases, the defilement cases are more than the rape cases?
It is because, you know, children are vulnerable, and it's for us adults to protect them.
Right.
But most of the time, mothers, parents tend to trust people around them and say, oh, and there are people who come and say, oh, this is my wife. This is my wife.
Right.
And, you know, when children growing up, they say, oh, mommy ni papa, that kind of it. So it's in the child's mind. And so parents, guardians, foster parents tend to trust people around them. I don't want to mention specific names in terms of role, profession, so that it will be like I'm stigmatizing certain group of people. But whoever you tend to leave your child with, you should be double sure, more than double sure, that this is somebody you can easily be confident enough to say, I can leave my child. Because sometimes people leave their children and go to work. When they close, they don't know who they interact with. Sometimes these children come home and they are alone in the house. Anybody can take advantage of them. Sometimes in the compound house, somebody will send a child, oh, go and buy toffee for me, or cook for me, or something for me. The child brings the item, and then she's dragged into the room. So normally it is as a result of who we leave our children with. Of course, there are instances that you have a father also sexually abusing the child. That's
most terrible. Now, Cynthia, I like to ask you, from what she's saying, these are reported cases. Okay. Does that tell us something? She's telling us only of the reported cases.
I was about to make that comment.
Right.
I think apart from the vulnerability issue of children being vulnerable, we also know that people tend not to report, especially the adults.
Right.
I mean, for children, they are in the care of adults who make the decision to go ahead and report. But if you're an adult and you get raped, you have to make that decision whether or not you're going to report.
Right.
So basically for rape, we may not be seeing a lot of reported cases because people just don't report.
Right.
There is data that suggests that about 95% of rape victims do not report their situations, their assaults.
That's quite startling. And when it involves families, she just mentioned that sometimes you would have the thing happening within a family setting. So relations are involved. I can imagine that that might be difficult for people to want to report.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. So let me go to, I'll come to you because Cynthia will tell us about this coalition. There is a coalition that is, you know, doing this movement to sort of bring some reprieve and relief to survivors of domestic violence or abuse or sexual abuse. But let's go on Zoom and welcome Amake Abebresa. Hello, Ama.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good to have you. So we are here today because even though this has been happening in the country for a long time, and there has been some talk about it once in a while, you gave it that sort of attention by doing a petition, which has so far, we understand, gathered in excess of 15,000 signatures. What motivated your crusade?
Oh my goodness, I don't know if I would call it a crusade, as opposed to just being saddened at the situation, because it didn't seem correct to me when I first heard about this, and there were even a few people who disagreed with me, because I'd always heard that, oh, okay, in Ghana, if there's a defilement case or if there's a rape case, you have to pay a fee. And it didn't make any sense to me because, quote unquote, we're supposed to have free health care. And I was thinking of, in my layman's term as the NHIS. So it was only, I think, a couple of months ago when DSP Afia Tenge, I saw a quote on a publication, I think it was Pulse, where she confirmed where you know, because there was nothing official online. You know, it's all fine and dandy when there's hearsay, but you can only really go on record with something when you have something tangible, either a quote or something in the media. So when I saw that, it was like, oh my goodness. You know, some people disagree that this wasn't true. No, some people said, no, it's free, it's free, it's free. So this was just like, look, now there's this confirmation. I can't sit back. And I literally remember that night I didn't sleep. I was up to about 3 a.m. And I'm thinking, what can I do? You know, a lot of times you go on social media and we make noise, but I realized that there was strength in numbers. So literally within maybe less than 5 or 6 days, we're already up to 5,000. And I must say that there was a few people that I reached out to, you know, who all retweeted the petition initially. Sarkodie retweeted it. Yvonne Nelson retweeted it. John DeMello, Lydia Forson, so many other people, because I think this is a big interest to a lot of people. It was, and that was what basically just, you know, sparked the petition online. It was, I guess, maybe about a month or so after the petition that I got to find out that there are other people who are also fighting this and have been fighting this for a long time. I guess sometimes when you're in the public eye, because you have followers on social media, a lot of people got to hear about it. But one of the things, as we'll talk about the coalition in a bit, is there are so many people who find this thing as a bane. I know the police find it as a bane. I know Dofsu does. I know there's legal people. I know there's medical practitioners. And we need to come to the middle somewhere. And when I did start the petition, I went to see the First Lady, who was very affable. And she's like, no, something definitely needs to be done. I also saw the Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection, Honorable Cynthia Morrison, and she was like, oh, wow, yes, her ministry is doing something about it. But now it's been like a couple of months and there's no action yet. And if I say action, meaning that there needs to be an enforcement of the laws which are already in place, which, I'll be honest, when I started this petition, I didn't even know there was a law in place already. I got that education later on, thanks to yourself, Samson, and the likes of other legal people like Irene. But it's just one of those ones where it blew my mind. Like, look, so we're literally fighting for laws which other people have already fought for.
Right.
How is this why are we even here right now?
That's right. Okay, so I'll return to you to ask, because I have discovered that since you began that petition, you seem to have come face to face with some of these cases, and you are providing some sort of help in that regard. So I'll come back to for you to tell us how bad you have come to know the situation to be. Before I get to the coalition for survivors of domestic violence that Cynthia will tell us about, and how exactly they hope to make some inroads in this matter, let's get Dr. Ako Akoto Ampao, who is the Medical Director, Eastern Regional Hospital in Koforidua. Doc, thank you very much for your time. Hello, Dr. Ampao.
Yes, something. Thank you very much for hosting me.
Right. So, Doc, we've gotten to know that you have been doing something. That whilst we know that there is actually some scale of fees, as in approved by the Medical Association, and doctors are charging between 800 and even up to 2,000 for the medical examination that is needed, very critical for prosecution, you don't charge a dime. How did that come about? And what have you come to know the circumstance of sexual abuse to be? And how does it, affect your work when you don't charge for it?
All right, something I want to say that, sexual abuse and domestic violence should be condemned in all uncertain terms. And it's something that we cannot put up with. However, it's a very predominant thing that happens across the world. It's been reported even in Ghana. Many of the survivors do not even want to be associated with it, let alone come to report. And for me, something, the only reason why I would say that I do not take money for doing a medical examination and reporting fee, and it's because I really feel that the victims have gone through some ordeal already, and this is not the time to compound their situation, especially when they cannot afford, and more so when you have practiced for a long time to realize that those who usually get affected by this are the very poor. And something I want to say that Ghana Medical Association approved fees for reporting on rape and domestic violence is between 300 and 500, and not the 2,000 that you are calling.
We have confirmed that. We have confirmed that. That's what some are charging. Yes, Amma wanted to say something.
No, Doc, I just want to, there's a document which we've seen, and the fees can go up to 2,000 cedis actually. So this is the approved fee. I have that document. Even some sections of the media has that document from Ghana Medical Association. And so I can send that to you. The approved fee can go up to 2,000, but from what we've been told, it's really up to the doctor to decide, okay, I'll take 100 cedis, or I'll look at you people look rich, so I want 2,000. It's within the approved fees.
Something, can I respond to that?
Yes.
Just briefly. I want to put on record that our approved fee does not go beyond 500 for a medical report. And there is document that can show to that. However, I want to see what other documents that she has to that.
I'm going to send it to Samson as we speak, so just bear with me. Hopefully the media people can put up. Maybe we're misunderstanding. Bear with me 1 second.
Right, but Doc, let's do this. Let's do this so that we get to know the things that are required soon after somebody survives, such incident. You don't only do an examination and produce a report, but because you expect that you'll be invited to attend to court to testify on the back of the report you have issued, you also take a charge When I say you, I'm not saying Dr. Akoto Ampao. So,
yes.
So the fees, as we have seen them, and we have heard them being justified, actually go up to 2,000 to take care of the transportation in and out for the doctor who is attending to the court.
Okay, Samson, I want to begin with what would be done or what is being done when we get a case of defilement or rape. Okay. It is expected that the victim would get immediate medical care. And immediate is immediate.
All right.
This is not the time that we want the victim to be going around police station and all other places looking for money and other things to take care of that. Because we understand that there is a physical injury and other things that the person is going through. But more importantly is that we as doctors would want to secure the future of the victim by ensuring that we are able to intervene with medication and other things to prevent transmission of infections. For example, looking at HIV, which is very crucial. So we intend to do what we call the PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis for rape victims. And this is very important. And it is as important that within the few hours that it occurs, it is more effective. So the earlier it is, the better. Having done that, then we take care of, for example, the physical injury that may be associated with such victims. Aside that, we plan for the emotional and psychological aspect of it. Something, the thing that everybody is talking about the medical report, is a secondary thing. When these victims have been seen immediately, all that report can be documented in the patient's folder, and then it can be held. So even after 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 1 month, when the Attorney General's department or the police are ready to go to court, all they need to do is come back with a document, and then we can transcribe what we have recorded. However, when people think that you need to get the police report as a first call, that is where all the errors and other things occur, because it takes them some time to be able to gather this money. And then when they do that, by the time they report, all the evidence that would pick up in the medical examination is gone. So you will not get a good report. So we need to distinguish between care that is provided by doctors following an incident like that, and then writing a medical report.
All right.
And having written a medical report, can I go on?
Please go on.
Yes, this report is submitted to the police, and then they decide what to do with the case together with the Attorney General's department and others. However, when this case must go to the law court, and then the doctor is informed or screened to come and attend and provide evidence, then we expect that they would give us that medical report for us to compare and then read the patient's folder and prepare ourselves so that we can appear in court to give evidence to exactly what it is that has been written as a report from us.
All right. Thank you for that explanation. Now, Cynthia, the question now is that, as we understand, after Amake Aberese brought this to the fore and got people to rally around, the first time I got to know about the petition was when Mrs. Irene Abochi Nyahe, forwarded the petition or spoke about it on a lawyer's platform. Immediately I got to know about it, I also decided to circulate it. And we realized that shortly after that, the signatories to the petition had shot up. And so now you are 15,000 and counting. We know that a group of you, lawyers, doctors, from various diverse backgrounds, have come together to form the Coalition for Survivors of Domestic Violence. You are giving a push to this to ensure that this ends. no fees are charged. What exactly are you doing in that direction to ensure that this is achieved?
Like you rightly mentioned, this coalition comprises individuals from different professional backgrounds. And I'm tempted to add the signatories to the petition, over 15,000.
Right.
Well, currently on the platform, we are over 50, I think.
Okay.
And as we sit here, our discussion is centered around sexual violence, but
That's
as
right.
our name suggests, it's more about domestic violence survivors, right?
Right.
But we are prioritizing the sexual violence because we realize that there are a lot of issues. Of course, domestic violence prosecution generally has issues. There are a lot of hurdles in terms of achieving justice.
Right.
But if you look at the sexual issue and also the fact that, you know, this is a serious violation of a person's dignity, like DSP mentioned earlier, we think that we have to prioritize this. And looking at the major issue of getting the report and the fees attached to it, we thought we should give it a push. So this is our priority issue at the moment that we're dealing with. After this, we have to go to other issues because, like I mentioned, there are other hurdles.
You just issued a statement, I think this week, on the circumstance, and you explain that this ought not happen. Can you explain why it shouldn't happen, that anybody will charge a fee for it?
Because basically, it shocks the conscience of any reasonable person to think that you would demand, a doctor would demand a fee for getting a medical report when we know how important a medical report is to a successful
But they're providing a service.
No, you see, in cases of domestic violence or even criminal issues generally, this is a matter for the state, right? And so the victim is basically a witness. And the victim who has experienced something like that should not bear an additional cost in addition to all the pains that she's going through. So reasonably, and that is what is actually supposed to be, the state needs to bear the cost. You know, and even for transportation, I was thinking to myself as I was coming, even for the victims or the survivors' transportation, it shouldn't be borne by the person. And like we said earlier, a lot of the victims are actually very vulnerable, you know, and along the poverty line issues. So you want to make sure that you are giving them the necessary support so that we can curb this issue in society. So for us as lawyers, doctors, and all the interested persons on this platform, we think that we need to really give this a push for whatever fees that are curtailing the attainment of justice to be brought to a halt. We have the laws already.
I should be asking, what is the role of this medical report in the prosecution process?
So, Samson, let me just go briefly to the Criminal Offense. I hope I can read, right?
That's fine, yeah.
Criminal Offences Act.
So you're here on COVID and the law. This is your legal light and health law in these trying times. And today we are asking why sexual abuse, those who suffer sexual assault, rape, defilement, are being asked to pay for medical examination, which is the first step to the prosecution process and their treatment. Why is that so when we understand there is law to the contrary? Yes, Cynthia.
Yes, so if you look at Chapter 6 of the Criminal Offences Act, it says that, Section 99, whenever upon the trial of any person for an offence punishable under this code, it is necessary to prove carnal knowledge or unnatural carnal knowledge, the carnal knowledge or unnatural carnal knowledge shall be deemed complete upon proof of the least degree of penetration. So this is what the medical report would essentially do, right? Establish that there's been some level of penetration. I mean, excuse me to say, you do not expect the court to examine with a physical eyes. You need a medical proof. And that's why the medical report is essential. So if you're charging fees that the victim or the survivor cannot pay, then essentially you stop the case right there, because the proof is the first step before you would even come to think of the consent or otherwise in cases of defilement, right? So this is how important medical reports are. And if you're charging and they can't pay for it, it means you're letting lots of people off the hook. And if
there is a bit of a delay after the violence, and I mean the rape or defilement, you still stand the risk of losing the evidence, right?
Right.
Okay.
Let me just add that you stand the risk of losing the evidence because it's not just about proving the penetration, but you also have to prove that this is actually samples from this accused person. And that's why when it takes longer, you're likely to lose the evidence that is needed.
But what can you say in addition to that? What's the role of this medical report in the ensuring justice for those who are victims?
Okay, so the medical report is very crucial because it's a form of corroborative evidence. It goes to corroborate whatever the survivor is saying.
Okay.
We, of course, I mean, in Ghana, under the law, we can go to court even with statements from just the accused and then the witness. But then when you go to court without other corroborative evidence, what is going to be is going to be oath upon oath. So whose statement do you believe over what?
Okay.
So for us to go to court and have the chances,
certainty.
Exactly, there's a need for us to collect all other evidence. And one of them that is crucial is a medical form, because the medical form or the report is able to link the victim, the survivor, to the perpetrator.
Right.
And so then you establish a link.
Okay.
Then you can add other evidence that you collect, like maybe torn panties or other evidence that you...
And like Cynthia said, it only takes a medical examination to prove the requirement of the law that she just read, which says there must be proof of the least degree of penetration. And the only way to do that is through a doctor or a physician examining the situation. Now, I'm going to Amma to find out a bit more about how she has come to understand how bad this situation is. But Cynthia, I wanted to know exactly what the laws say so that we can hold anybody who is trying to charge and tell them the law says in this, you know, section or this article that you shouldn't charge. What does the law say?
We have, I would say, 3 laws that are immediately relevant to the situation. You're looking at the Domestic Violence Act, Section 8. You're looking at the legislative instruments, the Domestic Violence Act as well, and then the Hospital Fees Act. And if you look at the Domestic Violence Act and its regulations, it states clearly that when a person visits or a survivor visits a hospital, the police station, the police refers to the hospital, the person is entitled to free medical examination and treatment. And then when you look at the legislative instruments also, it reinforces this point that a survivor is entitled to free medical treatment. My observation is that the Domestic Violence Act does not really talk about reports. But if you look at the Hospital Fees Act, it mentions clearly reports in addition to medical treatment. Okay. So when you read these laws together, the effect is that the survivor is entitled to free medical treatment as well as the medical report that the court needs to be able to adjudicate the matter. So essentially, it's a free service, and the state is supposed to bear that. Let me mention also that when you look at the Domestic Violence Act, the Parents Act itself, it only talks about state facilities, right? But when you look at the legislative instrument, there's a section that brings in private facilities in cases of emergency. Now, the challenge here is that for the state facilities, the law is silent as to where the money is supposed to come from. It just says free medical treatment and then reports, if you're reading it together with the Hospital Fees Act. But then the legislative instrument extends to private facilities. And for that, it says that the secretariat, that's the Domestic Violence Secretariat, would pay the hospital or the private facility for the medical fee. So it is expected that no matter where the victim seeks treatment or the report, the victim should never bear the cost for it. So we have laws that clearly state that there shouldn't be any fees. I'm quite surprised to even find out that the Medical Association has a prescribed fee for getting reports in this case. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so I will return onto this issue, and Cynthia refers to the Hospital Fees Act, which is a 1971 law. And in Section 3 of that law, it provides for exemptions for particular services. And it says fees shall not be paid in respect of a medical examination or a report required by a department of state. So if the police requires a medical examination or a report for the purposes of doing justice to a victim or a survivor of domestic violence, it ought to be free. Then she refers to the Domestic Violence Act itself, which also uses the expressions free of charge. And then she refers to the other things. Now, so Amma, my next question to you is, I have had the privilege of knowing that some people have called upon you, and you have even trying to try and give some assistance. And I'm talking about things happening now, not like Chief Superintendent Owusu gave us the statistics. So people will say these are statistics, but it is happening now. How bad is the situation?
It's just listening to all the legalities and everything, which is very important. For me, I think, and this is not a blame game to the doctors, it's not a blame game to the government. Something is wrong everywhere. It all from the top to the bottom. Because I get calls from family members. I get messages on social media. Today, I've had to be on the phone with an uncle of a 6-year-old girl who, this was like 2 hours ago, who was defiled. And the defilement was so bad that the damage went from her vagina to her anus.
Yeah.
I don't need to hear this. I don't want to hear this. I'm not a medical person. I'm just a human being. There's a case in the northern region of a married man, who defiled 3 siblings. The family has contacted me. And I'm trying to assist. There's another 6-year-old girl in the Volta region. There's a 11-year-old girl in the. It's like, I think, take anything aside, take anything away. This is a human issue. We should not even be on this platform trying to get people to do the right thing. No child should be defiled in the first place. No woman should be defiled in the first place. No boy, no man should have to go through this. But we live in the world that this happens. And that's one issue on its own. But here in Ghana, how do we make sure we're on the right side? I know some people have been trying to politicize this in this time. NDC, came out in their manifesto that this is something that they're going to take up, which is fine. It's fine. But the truth of the matter is, we have real situations happening today. And I'm hoping, I'm so glad that Chief Superintendent Owusu is there, because another part of what I tend to hear when families call me is, after these perpetrators have done these mostly to children, then they want the cases not to be prosecuted. They send their family members, they're sending chiefs, they're sending sometimes people in, big men, they know big men in society, so that they settle the matters at home. And often, because of poverty, some of these people feel they have to go this way. And it's not fair. Bottom line is, I think I got angry a little bit. And I'll be honest, when I found out that, like, this thing that, the petition, everything, there's already a law in place. And I do think, from even me learning things over the last few months, is there's even doctors who are not aware that this fee is essentially illegal.
That's right.
Whether you have an approved fee or you don't. And, a lot of times police get blamed for not doing their work, or, thank God for doctors who are not taking fees, but some of them are. And even like there was a case during the lockdown of another child in Kumasi. The uncle called me. They went back. The woman didn't have the money. She was like, I think the doctor wanted 500 cedis. They didn't have the money. Okay. And I do feel like often when it's a child, most of us feel more sympathy because at least it's a child.
That's right.
But there was a case on social media of a young woman, I think just last week, and come and see the comments. Because she met a guy, she was talking to, and the guy raped her, they're blaming the girl. We need to get rid of victim blaming. We need to get rid of so many of these.
So let me get to Chief Superintendent Owusu on this question. These kinds of people don't have to be part of our society. What is the success rate of prosecutions? in these situations? What are the challenges in securing successful prosecution without a medical report? I'm listening to Amma, and I am hearing tears in the voice. And the example she gives should bring everybody to begin to think. So tell us what we need to know.
Okay, so just like Amma said, we live with it every day. So because you have a complainant before you, a survivor before you, and the state in which the survivor is, and yet the survivor is unable to pursue justice because the person is not able to pay for medical fees. There are times that the police individually, we give out our monies and pay for the medical.
I've heard a lot of that.
Exactly. And then what happens is that because the medical report is an issue, we are unable to proceed to go further, to go to court. Because sometimes when you're gathering the evidence, you need to establish whether something actually took place. One, so when we are unable to get the medical form, then it kind of slows down the investigations. And proof of rape, in fact, getting conviction for rape across the world is difficult.
That's
Even
right.
in developed countries,
That's
it's
right.
so difficult. And so when you have an additional, quote unquote, unnecessary hindrance to it, it also aggravates the situation and makes it very difficult for us to have conviction. And for defilement, a summary trial, and then rape is on indictment. So it's done by the Attorney General's office, and the defilement is done by the police. And because it's a summary trial, we are able to get conviction and faster than for rape cases. And what happens is that with the medical form, when the absence of medical form gives the perpetrators the opportunity to settle the matter. Because what happens is that when the victim, the survivor's mother or parent or guardian or whoever goes to the hospital and she's not able to pay, she comes back to the perpetrator and said, you see, I've gone to the hospital, they said this and that. Then the perpetrator will offer money. I have had instances when I was a regional coordinator for Greater Accra where a woman went to collect 200 cedis. And the child's womb was damaged. Yes, so in fact, the womb had to be removed in all because
And the woman took 200 cedis from the perpetrator.
Yes. So she was brought before me and I asked her why she did that. She said, she hasn't got money. She needs money to start capital, because she was selling a petty trader. So she needed, and her capital was 50 Ghana cedis.
And this woman is being asked to pay 300, 500 Ghana cedis for medical exams.
Exactly. So when the perpetrator offered her 200 cedis, for her, it was more than her capital.
To end the case.
Exactly, to end the case. In fact, recently, one of the survivors' parents collected money from the perpetrator who was then in our custody. We didn't know. So we went to the scene as usual to conduct evidence. And the policemen who went, the doctor staff were held hostage there. In fact, they had to call for reinforcement before, and by the time the police got there, in fact, they were very lucky. It was just the vehicle they damaged. They were able to rescue the police personnel because they didn't understand why, and we didn't have that information. They didn't understand why we should come there to come and do investigation when they have paid money already to the...
I'm going to Doc now. Yes, Cynthia, say what you have to say.
But you see, I don't think that the fact that a perpetrator has offered money should stop a prosecution because there's nothing like that. I mean, a crime is a crime.
No, you see, let me come in here. It's not about stopping but it's a hindrance.
Yeah,
because what happens
you need the cooperation of the victim.
What happens is that they move out. Where are you going to trace them? It becomes difficult. They move out. There are instances that the people are able to offer accommodations, alternative accommodations, and you go to their place and they're out of the place.
I've heard you say something. These fees are actually, according to the Ghana Medical Association thing that is signed, I saw it just a while ago again, the fees is paid directly to the medical officer.
Yes, medical officer.
And you say that is the height of an illegality.
It is.
Well, explain that.
It is because, one, the doctor is paid to do what he's supposed to do. He's been employed by the state. at the time that he was
talking about
signing,
doctors in state employment.
State employment.
In government hospitals.
In government hospitals. Now, at the time that you were endorsing the form that you were endorsing, it was government time, government hour, government resources, government setting. You have no business to collect money during a time that you have already been paid for. And you see, as Cynthia said earlier on, crime is the state against the individual. It is the state that has been wronged, even though it's the individual that has been wronged. And the
state is charging money.
Exactly.
I see what you mean.
Exactly. So there is no, because it's the state that's supposed to foot the cost of justice when it comes to criminal law. It's the state that ensures justice.
But like Amma said, from her experience, some of the doctors don't even know that there is law that says you shouldn't charge. Exactly, and that's why we have been engaging them when we have the opportunity with this fact. We try to get the attention and have a meeting with the GMA, and then unfortunately the COVID issue came in. So we're trying to engage them on a roundtable discussion to bring certain things to their attention. And apart from that, for me, when you look at the Court Act 1993, you realize that provisions have been made for people, witnesses who go to court, and includes doctors. Okay. So a doctor who attends to court as a witness for the survivor, yes, is supposed to be paid from the court. By the court. Yes. Okay. So what you do is that you go to the court. They are normally subpoenaed. So you go there with your form. There's a form that you fill. Every time you go to court, you report to the registrar. It is noted down. Then after you finish giving your evidence, then they will process whatever needs to be processed, and then they issue you your check. In fact, it's not even limited to doctors alone. Police officers who have been subpoenaed to come to court. But you know this our system, how it works. And we know that these fees for subpoena witnesses is practically nothing. There have been situations as a lawyer that I have to bring in a subpoena witness. You have to, on your own, try to make sure that you give the witness enough. So, Dr. Kutampao, so you have done a report, and because you have signed onto the report, you will be called to come to the courtroom. You go there, you may spend a whole day, you are not attended to, your whole day is wasted. You may have driven through traffic for so long, and if you are in a private environment as a hospital, explain to us, how do we expect you not to charge and still do this service and go to the court and still be treated as if you were actually, you know, not wanted in the courtroom, when the court also is supposed to treat you as though you are collaborating with it to punish a perpetrator?
Thank you very much, Samson. I think we should be careful not to mix emotions and other things with it. And I'll say for myself, all this description by the police, AMA, and co, is just the tip of the iceberg. I've seen more in my practice when it comes to what defilement and rape has done to people. And it is really, really sad. I mean, we just need to look at the way forward and at what must be done. For example, they allude to the fact that some of them would need some form of treatment that would even amount to doing surgery, complex surgery to repair the vagina through to the anus. Something, who pays for this? We must understand that practically somebody would use some resources which must be paid for. When you go to theater, you must pay for the use of the gauze, you must pay for the use of the anesthetic machine, you must pay for consumables. Somebody must pay. And it is about time we give effect to the law. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that if the law says do this, you must give effect to the law. In giving effect to our fundamental human rights as human beings, for that matter, that they are entitled to health care. I believe in Ghana, nobody should die if the person is not well. I mean, if you come to hospital, we would try and keep you alive. However, somebody must pay. In doing that, NHIS defines a package. We cannot go and say that because the law says that I mean, government must pay for this. So unilaterally, we bill NHIS. They are not going to pay because it's not part of their package.
That's very disturbing.
Somebody must actually pay for it.
That's very disturbing. And we are running out of time. We're running out of time, but Dr. Ako Akoto-Ampao, we want to say thank you very much and encourage you that you reach out to more of your colleagues and encourage them to tread the path that you tread. I am surprised that you are able to do it the way you do and survive in the system. But let's wrap up. And Ama, do you have any sense of fulfillment since you started this crusade? Have your goals been achieved? When will you say that this job is done? In 1 minute.
I think once government upholds these laws already in place, it will just be step one, and I think that's just me personally, because then it will be making hopefully ease one bane. Bear in mind, there's so many bane survivors of, rape and domestic violence go through. So it'll be one step, I think the bigger question for me and for all of us is, why should these even happen in the first place? Why is there so many of these things? And a lot of times people want to blame modern times as, oh yeah, it's because of movies or whatever. I have a 53-year-old friend who was defiled at the age of 6. So even my mom earlier on said today that these things have been around for a long time. It just now the difference is we're talking about it more.
All right.
So the step is to get more people to talk about it,
and
to get
it
more
done.
Yes, and let's educate more and more people about consent.
Right.
I feel like even just this step will be a very tiny step.
All
There's
right.
more work to be done.
All right. Now, Cynthia, the coalition for domestic survivors of domestic violence, what do you say must be done immediately?
Immediately, we are asking for some kind of directive to be issued to either Ghana Health Service or the Medical Association, whoever is responsible for charging the fees. And of course, in my opinion, the Ministry of Gender is supposed to lead this process.
All right.
So we are looking forward to the ministry, facilitating some kind of dialogue and then issuing the necessary directive. Or I don't know where else the directive could come from, from the presidency or wherever. But the ministry needs to lead this process.
What would you say finally, also?
Finally, what I would like to say is that fortunately we have the laws.
Right.
And when the doctor was talking, he talked about somebody must pay, somebody must pay. We already know who should pay.
Right.
And it's the state.
Okay.
So it's for the state, as I indicated. Maybe at the annual budget, maybe there should be a provision within budget for health services, health services that will go into such.
Thank you so very much. And this is covered under law, and we have been listening to actor and TV presenter Ama K. Abebrese. We also heard Dr. Ako Akoto-Ampao, Medical Director, Eastern Regional Hospital, Koforidua. Also, right here in the studio, Cynthia Nimo Ampredu. She's a lawyer and former Executive Director of the Human Rights Advocacy Center. And thank you to Chief Superintendent Osua Treme, who's the Director of DOFSU. I'm Samson Ladi Ayenini. Let the conversation continue. This is wrong and it must stop.